We got major rumors here at College Football Now by Chat Sports around the coaching carousel. So really quick, let's get you notified on which jobs are available right now. As it stands, Penn State, LSU, Florida, the Arkansas Razorbacks, Oklahoma State, UCLA, Virginia Tech, Stanford, Oregon State. You see it all on your screen. I also think Florida State and Auburn are a couple of other schools that notably could open up here fairly soon. So coming up here on CFB Now, we're going to be discussing the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes. There's some drama in Baton Rouge, and we got even more CFB buzz and some candidates for some of the top jobs in college football. My name is Trizzy Trace. You're watching CFB Now. Let's have a good time. So there's a lot of change that's going to happen this offseason during the college football offseason. And obviously, a lot of things have to start with the head coaching searches. And a big name that we are all watching is Lane Kiffin. The massive domino that we all have to wait to see what will happen is, will he stay out in Oxford? Will he head down to Baton Rouge? Will he pack his bags and head south to Gainesville? These are all options for Lane Kiffin, and he is expected to be the number one guy in all of college football for the coaching carousel, barring any crazy changes. So you have to have the conversation, why would he stay? Why would he go? There's a really good argument for both of those things. So why would he stay? Well, he's been very successful since becoming the head coach of the Ole Miss Rebels, and his family lives in Oxford. His brother is the Ole Miss defensive line coach. They're planted, they're rooted out in Oxford, and right now they got a lot of good things going. And I think that he is a really good culture fit for Ole Miss's football team, and he's done a really good job of bringing them back to relevancy and keeping them very competitive in the SEC, but he hasn't quite gotten over the hump and been able to compete truly for a national championship. I mean, Ole Miss has struggled to be able to compete in the SEC outside of the LSUs and the Ole Misses and the Bamas and the Georgias and the Floridas and the everything. Like, it feels like every single year they're just one of those games away. If you win one of those, you're in, and it just feels like every year they come up just short. And, you know, he does heavily rely on the transfer portal, so there's a lot of roster turnover, that he has to do every single year. And I do think if he was specifically interested in LSU, I think that's actually a really good fit, and I think that that's a place that he could get over the hump. He could be able to compete for a national championship. They don't have much in-state recruiting that they have to really compete with, and Louisiana has a lot of talent in high school football that could really help propel the Tigers back to the top of college football now that they fired Brian Kelly. And there is some intel that's been leaked, coaching agents on Lane Kiffin, ESPN leaking that it's hard for me to see Lane Kiffin staying with the Ole Miss Rebels with this much movement going on. There's a lot of change that's going to happen. Lane Kiffin's the big domino that's going to have to fall, so we will have to see where he lands. Where do you think he will coach next season? Will he stay at Ole Miss? Will he be on the move? Let me know in the comment section. Be sure to share your thoughts. Now, I want to talk about LSU because down in Baton Rouge, I believe that LSU could swing big. I mean, they have every reason to be competitive. They have every reason to throw the bag at any coaching candidate that they want. Why would they not? Well, they just had a pretty bad experience doing that. So it begs the question, should they go crazy and swing big at a head coach, or should they go and get somebody who's going to help rebuild it from the ground up? Like, LSU has a really crazy situation going on right now. Down in Baton Rouge, I mean, we have LSU grad Loco Lopez here on the ones and twos. Feel free to chime in at any point if you want, man. But it's arguably the top job in college football. I think that LSU is one of those coaching positions that if you're there and you're successful, you will be the king of college football. However, when the going gets tough, Louisiana is very passionate about football. They're going to make sure that they make changes very quickly. And, you know, they don't have a permanent president right now. And the governor of Louisiana, Jeff Landry, he actually appoints the board, and he is going to be involved with the hiring of the next head coach. The athletic director, Scott Woodward, will not be involved in hiring the next head coach. It's pretty interesting. Lots of drama here. Make sure I have my notes correct. Landry He was part of the discussions that led to firing Brian Kelly. And then he took shots at Scott Woodward's hiring history because he was responsible for two of the largest buyouts in college football ever. Jimbo Fisher with Texas A&M, over $70 million buyout. Brian Kelly just had a $50+ million buyout, although there's reports out there that the settlement was, the buyout was a little bit less. Now it's like around $20 million. All in all, he is responsible for two major buyouts, and he wants to hold them responsible for it. And Scott Woodward is not selecting the next head coach, according to Jeff Landry, the governor of Louisiana. Hell, I'd let Donald Trump select him before I'd let him do it. I think that's such a crazy thing to say as the governor. You would let the president select the next head coach for the state school over the athletic director. That's just such an indictment on the things that he has done. Like, it's just crazy what's going on right now. Again, it begs the question, should they swing big? I mean, Jeff Landry, he's been critical of the hefty contracts that these coaches have been receiving. This is a pattern. That's something that Jeff Landry said. Will LSU avoid making a big splash? They've historically made a lot of those, and it hasn't necessarily worked out. Brian Kelly being a prime example of that. Ed Orgeron, he was a great fit for it. He wasn't necessarily a massively big splashy hire. I mean, it was a great hire, but I feel like Brian Kelly was a huge splash hire, and it burned in flames. Like, it just begs the question, should they go and get somebody a little bit more developmental? Either way, I do think that Lane Kiffin is a prime candidate for the LSU Tigers, but I think that there's also a lot of interesting options if he does not end up heading down to Baton Rouge. Clark Lee has built a really nice program out in Vanderbilt. Drinkwitz in Mizzou, he has done some really, really impressive things, but we all know that Mizzou isn't going to truly compete. LSU is a much better job than Mizzou. Sorry, Tiger fans. Tiger fans. Either way, he would be a Tiger. But even an in-state guy, John Summerall, has done some really impressive things at Tulane out in New Orleans. All in all, there's a lot of things that LSU needs to figure out before they end up making a hire. They got to get their situation in-house under control before they end up making a hire. So I don't think that they're going to be one of the first schools to go and make that hire. So I think that they will miss out on some of these top candidates. Maybe, just maybe, we'll see Lane Kiffin stick around and wait it out, see what happens. But I just think that there are a lot of problems to solve in Baton Rouge before they can get a new head coach. Now, we're going to talk more about Lane Kiffin, Florida, Penn State, Arkansas. A lot of discussions to be had here in just one moment. First things first, got to thank today's presenting sponsor, and that is PrizePicks. We make decisions every single day, but over on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid, so don't miss out on any of the excitement this season over on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. If you download the app and use code CLNS, we got a pretty sweet deal for you. It'll give you $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. It's very simple to play. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. PrizePicks is the best way to get in on the action of more than 40 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And if you need an example of how it works, here it is. I really like Tulane, and I really like Jake Retzlaff, so I'm going to take the more on his passing yards. I think that Cardinal Tate, the big body receiver for the Buckeyes, is going to have a big day against Penn State. And I'm actually going to be at this SMU versus Miami game, so I'm going to take the less on Carson Beck's passing yards. I'm pretty excited to go tune in and see that one in action. And I'm going to be hoping to cash in and making some money thanks to PrizePicks. Reminder to click the link in the comments or description of this video to get started with PrizePicks today. It is the best place to play daily fantasy sports, and they put their users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. They offer Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Click the link in the comments or description of this video to get started with PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Reminder, use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Shout out to PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. All right, so 2 places that I want to make sure that you guys have an eye on. It's Florida and Penn State. Those are like 2 of the big schools that I think are going to be on the race to make the first hire. And I don't necessarily think there's going to be a ton of overlap in terms of the candidates that they are going to target. We do have a pretty interesting report from ESPN, a college football source, saying even though we have a ton of potential searches, there's some niche searches. Penn State could not really be a search, and Florida might not really be a search. It might just be the obvious candidates. But for Penn State, one of those obvious candidates is now off the market as Nebraska has extended Matt Rule through the 2032 season. So they missed out on Curt Cignetti because Indiana extended him. They miss out on Matt Rule because they extended him. So who are some probable targets for the Nittany Lions? Well, let's give you a list. And maybe this is a crazy list, but maybe this is just a reaction. I don't know. I just think that these are some names to keep an eye on. I scoured through ESPN articles, scoured across the internet, and these are kind of a lists that I was able to compile just through everything that I've come up with. Now, Mike Elko is an interesting one. Obviously, he has the Texas A&M Aggies rolling right now, but he could be inclined to head back up to the Northeast. He's a native of New Jersey, played college football at Penn, and for what it's worth, Penn State has had a lot more success than Texas A&M. I know that the Aggies are hot right now, but I do think that outside of Michigan and Ohio State, it's a much, much easier path to get to national championships for Penn State than it would be for A&M, who has to go through LSU, Bama, Georgia. And Vanderbilt now. You got teams that are rising every single year. Clark Lee is one to keep an eye out, the head coach for the Vanderbilt Commanders. He's a protege, of Mike Elko. And Matt Campbell actually might be one to keep your eyes on, too, because he is a guy who's always been linked in head coaching rumors, but he's always been loyal to Iowa State. But this could be a good time for him to make that jump to a new school, make a big jump to a higher program, a higher volume school, and see if he can get some success in the Big Ten. Now, I want you guys to hit the sub button today if you guys want to get more updates around college football. We have almost 420,000 subscribers, and that doesn't happen on accident. So make sure you lock us in if you want more news, rumors, and buzz all around CFB. Now let's talk Kiffin to Florida, because there is a very obvious interest in Gainesville for Lane Kiffin. And I think that he is a dude that will fit in Florida. I think that he could be very successful with the Gators. And I think that he's a coach that Florida should be very, very persistent on trying to go and hire. And there's a handful of candidates that they can go and get if they don't want to get, or if they don't end up with Lane Kiffin. Maybe Drinkwitz could head instead of to Baton Rouge. Maybe he could go to Gainesville. And, there's sources out there saying that Drinkwitz is much smarter to know that Columbia, Missouri is a harder path than Gainesville, Florida. It's an easy thing to observe that. I think Florida's going to be in the race to make the first hire. To me, it kind of feels like it's Lane Kiffin or bust. I just don't see a world where Florida is going to let Lane Kiffin slip out of their hands. And if they do, it's going to be because he decides to stick around in Oxford. So that's just something to consider. Rhett Lashley might be a name to keep your eyes on. I think that he might actually stick around in Dallas. Jeff Brom, he's very, very loyal to Louisville. I don't know why he would leave, but he could be on the move if he wanted to take a little bit higher level of a job. But I'm an Arkansas guy, so I want to talk a little bit of Razorbacks. And, because I get to call the shots, that's what we're going to do here. Handful of candidates. The Arkansas Razorbacks job is actually one that's pretty interesting because obviously it's not the most illustrious job, but it is an SEC job, and it is a place that there's a lot of money and there's a lot of backing and there's a very passionate fan base that a lot of people don't necessarily know about. So for Arkansas, I do know that Bobby Petrino is being seriously considered as the head coach. Right now, he's the interim after they fired Sam Pittman. He was the OC, then promoted to the interim. I think that he is somebody who needs to get a handful of wins before the Razorbacks make a commitment to Bobby Petrino. I feel like if they hire him and he only gets like one win, it would be kind of a cop-out hire. And I just personally, as a graduate and as a fan, wouldn't really be all that jazzed about it. Rhett Lashley feels like a little bit of a long shot. Seems a little unlikely. Ryan Silverfield could be one. He beat Arkansas earlier in the year. Maybe he wants to make a little bit of a move up, but he does have Memphis competing to potentially play in the playoff. I also think that James Franklin needs to be in the mix here. I don't think that the Razorbacks are too good for James Franklin, and there's this discourse out there among Razorback fans that they are, and I don't know. But Summerall and Alex Galesh are both names that I also really, really like for the Arkansas Razorbacks. All I know is up in Fayetteville, they need somebody fresh, they need somebody new, and they need somebody who can bring some juice back to the Razorback team, because that is a school that's desperate for some success. And as a fan, I can't stop. I can't keep going on with being a Heartbreak Hogs fan. It just sucks, man. Now, this offseason is going to be crazy. If you agree with me, hit the thumbs up icon and like this video. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content around college football, NFL, NBA, baseball. We got all sorts of awesome coverage all year round, every single day. Make sure you subscribe. For me, for my guy Loco Lopez, appreciate you guys for tuning in, and have a happy football.